You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell in North Carolina, joined this week by Shane up in New England. Shane, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I can't complain. I'm also joined this week again by the Godfather himself, John Stevenson. John, how's it going?
It is going well. Glad to be here.
Love it. Well, this week, obviously, we are a roller coaster focused website. Our website is Coaster101, but we're not going to talk roller coasters this week. So go ahead and skip the episode if you want to. We're actually going to talk dark rides. And, while we definitely love a good roller coaster ride, certainly an underrated part of many amusement park trips is a lap or two on a classic dark ride or, a more advanced dark ride, obviously, as we head into the future when technological advances. There's many different iterations of the dark ride. They could be traditional on a track with, pretty basic animatronics or a couple of screens. They could be complex multimedia attractions. They can be water-based or trackless or interactive. But this week, we just wanted to talk about some of our personal favorites. And, for me, especially, I think a lot of the classic dark ride, at least in America, I know they date back to the early 1900s or even the 19th century a little bit. But Disney dark rides, I feel like Disney does dark rides better than almost anybody out there. And obviously one of the most iconic Disney dark rides is Pirates of the Caribbean, which opened at Disneyland in 1967. And then, a lot of people think it was a opening day attraction at Walt Disney World in 1971, but it actually opened 2 years later in 1973. Guys, I know you've both been to Walt Disney World or Disneyland, and you've experienced this. What do you think about Pirates of the Caribbean? Is it a true classic, but do you think it kind of has held up that classic moniker for as long as it's been around?
I definitely think so, yeah. The first time I went on it recently anyway, I didn't really get it, I guess. I didn't really appreciate it the first time I rode through it. And then just because I hadn't been to the Magic Kingdom since I was very, very young. But the more that I rode both other attractions, and then when I came back to Pirates, I had just a really great appreciation for what it was at the time it opened and even now. And I would probably say it's my favorite attraction in the Magic Kingdom. I think that, obviously things like the technology, like, the animatronics obviously aren't as advanced as other things that you're going to find throughout the park and throughout other parks. But the ride is just it's the definition of classic, in my opinion. I think when most people think of Disney World or Disneyland, they think of Pirates of the Caribbean. I just think everything about it, especially for the time that it opened, was really just technologically advanced, like the boat systems in the water. Obviously, the ride is, pirate themed and boat themed, but the way that they came up with that design and then the way that it's been used since, still being used to this day, I just think is a perfect representation of what that attraction was and still is.
I agree. Spot on, Shane. I think it is a timeless attraction. I mean, it's inspired a very successful film franchise. It is a great introduction. You've got the kind of apologies for any spoilers if you haven't been on Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's got a very mild drop inside. It's a great introduction to some of the more intense dark rides. It's something that the whole family can ride. It's been updated over the years, but I like that it's really stayed true to how it originally appeared at these parks. And so I really like that it's maintained that nostalgic status.
Yeah, I agree. And I like that you mentioned it's been updated because, even though it's been updated to, include things from the film, and recently with the red animatronic, which is a newer animatronic, which is in that auction scene, I think that even though it's been updated, it still has that original feel to it because the updates aren't like drastic. They're not putting, crazy explosions or any like over the top new animatronics or anything in there. So I think that that's part of the reason that it, still maintains the status that it is. And even with those new advanced animatronics, those are still my favorite parts of the ride. Are probably still the classic moments, like right after that drop where the ship is shooting at the fort. That's one of my favorite scenes in any dark ride. I just think that it's perfect, but it's a great representation of how you can keep updating a classic ride and still keep the feel of being the original spirit of the ride.
I got a hot take. I don't like any of the Johnny Depp animatronics. I'm fine with what they did with the redhead, but including Davy Jones and Barbossa and all these other iterations of characters who didn't exist in the original ride. I think kind of shoehorning them in there, it doesn't detract from the ride for me, but I could certainly do without them and kind of go back to the original thing. Maybe I'm a little bit of a purist, but kind of on the flip side, over in Shanghai when they opened in 2016, they've got their own version of Pirates of the Caribbean. It's less practical sets and animatronics. It's more media based. There's a really good article on the website that Nick did. And there's a video on our YouTube channel about how that attraction works. And I feel like there's definitely a place for those characters, and that place may be in Shanghai. Would I love to see the Magic Kingdom kind of upgrade completely to this new Pirates? Maybe. I like it the way it is. I'm great with the Disneyland version that goes through that Blue Bayou restaurant. I know it's a little more space constraints in Walt Disney World, so you can't get as much of a story. But it's one of the classics, and I think it's going to remain that way for as long as Disney has it going. But speaking of classics, and another attraction that the movie iteration or movie adaptation rather would not necessarily work would be another Disney classic, the Haunted Mansion, opened in 1969 at Disneyland and then opened 1971 at Walt Disney World. I love the Haunted Mansion. I think the gags, Pepper's ghost solution, it's so simple, it's so good. Obviously it's got that Omni-Mover track, and it's a lot of just old school magic for me that just, again, it's one of the it's very simple. It does what it needs to do perfectly. I will say I've only ridden the Walt Disney World version as is. I've been the one time I went to Disneyland, it was the Nightmare Before Christmas holiday overlay. So I got to see a lot of Jack Skellington and hear some Halloween Christmas carols. So I have not experienced the Disneyland Haunted Mansion with the Hatbox Ghost and all that good stuff. But John, I mean, you have also been to both Disney World and Disneyland. What do you think about Haunted Mansion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's up there with Pirates. It's a timeless attraction. I mean, it's I think even beyond hardcore Disney fans. I think it's just a kind of one of those universally known attractions. So I have been on both. I went on the Florida version, my first trip to Disney World, which was in '06, so it's been quite a while, and I don't think I've been on it in any of my subsequent visits. The Disneyland version I rode for the first time last year, 2019, and had a bit of a traumatic experience on that ride where I lost my phone, so that's kind of like when I think back to riding Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, that's kind of where my mind goes. Thankfully it was found, but still very traumatic experience for a few minutes. But yeah, exactly, Andrew. I think the effects, and of course, when you compare them to the technology used in newer attractions today, it pales in comparison. But there's just something about those practical special effects that you just can't replicate today in these. It just doesn't have the same authenticity. I just think it's completely different on another level.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's also one of my favorite rides at Magic Kingdom, probably at Disney as a whole. I just think that it kind of built on the atmosphere, I guess, that Pirates set up, in that, slow moving vehicle moving through lively scenes. And it just took that to another level with the effects like the Pepper's Ghost, which was mentioned, or the floating crystal ball is a great one too. And then the ending, there's so much going on in that graveyard scene. There's always something new to look at. And I think that's key to an attraction that has aged kind of as much as Haunted Mansion has, with limited changes, is kind of looking at something new every time and being able to appreciate a little more each time you ride it. And that just, I think, speaks volumes for how well the ride has held up.
For sure. And again, I promise if you're listening to this podcast, we're not going to just talk about Disney rides nonstop for half an hour, 45 minutes. But I do want to touch on a park that is almost essentially 100% dark rides, and that's Epcot. Obviously, when Epcot opened in 1982, pretty much every attraction in the park was a dark ride. And I've got to ask you guys this question. Of Epcot's dark ride portfolio, what is your favorite Epcot dark ride? And it could be a classic one, could be a more modern one. Shane, I'll go to you first and then go back to John.
I've never been to Epcot. However, I've seen plenty of POVs. So I think that my favorite would probably be Spaceship Earth. Just because, obviously it's the classic ride. It's inside the big, Epcot ball, Epcot dome. Everyone knows the outside of that. But same thing on the inside. It kind of reminds me of Pirates, honestly, is because you're kind of moving through. Obviously, it's different with Spaceship Earth because it's kind of like a chronology, which I like as well. It just rings true, that classic ride, and it's, I think, the perfect representation of what Epcot was about when Epcot opened. So that would probably be my pick, having never actually experienced it in person.
And John?
Well, for me, up until recently, it would have been Maelstrom, but of course, since that ride has been overtaken or overlaid by the Frozen franchise, now I'd have to say Spaceship Earth. And I think it's more sentimental reasons than anything. That was when I first went to Disney World, I was about 14. And so that was the first ride that we went on when we got to Epcot. And so I kind of associate it with that memory. And of course, it's not the most groundbreaking attraction. It's very tame, but I think for me, it's that sentimental value of that being really my first exposure to Epcot and what Epcot stands for, and that educational aspect of it that I think really obviously sets Epcot apart from other parks. And so I hope it, I don't know what the future holds for it, but I hope whatever updates and changes that it undergoes in the coming years, that they really keep it grounded, so to speak, and keep some of that classic feel to the ride.
Yeah, I'm to crib a line from Maelstrom. You are not the first to say that you prefer Maelstrom to Frozen, and nor will you be the last. But for me, I've got to go Living with the Land on this one. I love getting in that boat. I love just rolling around through the greenhouse, seeing the Mickey pumpkins, seeing the people in the lab. And I know former guest of the podcast, Carly Wiesel, she's got this like thing about the scientists working in the lab and Living with the Land and how you've never see them. I've been fortunate enough to see a scientist working in the lab. I love the slow moving boat ride through the greenhouse, seeing the foliage and seeing all the produce. That to me is like the best thing at Epcot, and I can't get enough of it. And obviously, I know a lot of people, they say Horizons was this just fantastic, amazing dark ride. I never got to ride it. I don't believe either of you guys got to ride it. Obviously, John, if you didn't go until you were 14, and Shane, you've never been.
Yep.
So there's some really good recreations of Horizons online for those listening, and we'll link those in the show notes. We'll actually go over now to some non-Disney rides. I told you we would talk about other non-Disney attractions. But John, I visited Knott's Berry Farm a couple of years ago at this point, and I didn't get on the Calico Mine ride, but I know you did. What did you think?
Oh, it was amazing. Totally unexpected. I knew it was a very well-regarded historic attraction, but I had not watched any POVs. I just really was kind of in the dark about its theming and the effects, and was just really blown away. I mean, it's again, it's one of those timeless attractions, and I love anything train related, and so it was very very campy, very again, family friendly. You could just tell it was an old ride. You can tell it opened in 1960. I mean, it was smaller. It's one of those things that I was kind of asked, like, I cannot believe this ride is still open or hasn't been replaced by something else. And I think that really speaks to Knott's commitment to really preserve its history and its older attractions. So, and I know it's had an update several years ago now. And so I didn't ride I guess the original version, but the way it exists today is it's a really spectacular attraction for its age.
And I gotta give a quick shout out. I gotta go over to Universal. I've got to give I would be remiss if I did not discuss the Universal Orlando original attraction, E.T. Adventure, which is still kicking it 30 years later. And it may or may not be because Steven Spielberg has threatened to like pull all his support from the parks if they get rid of E.T. That's like the constant theme park rumor. But, E.T. is, again, it's a simplistic dark ride. You've got the overhead trains, you've got the bicycle seats, you've got E.T. in the basket in front of you. And the guys that podcasted the ride, like one of their first episodes was about the ET adventure, and they go into it in a lot more detail than I do. But one thing I will say, and this is like a theme park nerd thing, the ET queue smells phenomenal. And
it seriously does.
There is a candle out there made, I think the company is called Park Sense, and I burned this candle in my apartment. It smells exactly like that forest. It is so good. This is not sponsored content for Park Sense, but go to their website, buy that candle, and you're transported right back into that musty, mossy, semi-chlorine smelling forest, and it is so good. And then another dark ride at Universal that I always have to ride, and it's just a simple track dark ride, is Cat in the Hat at Islands of Adventure. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the spinning or the craziness of the story. I really like it when Thing 1 and Thing 2 pop out of the box and they're like dot 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 dot, like marching like robots. I love that, and every time I'm at Islands of Adventure, I have to ride Cat in the Hat. And then the last kind of more traditional, simple dark ride I'm going to talk about is a one that's got a cult following despite only opening 1 year. And that is the Sally Dark Ride creation of Knights in White Satin, The Trip, at Hard Rock Park, which operated literally for 1 year in 2009. For those of you who don't know, Knights in White Satin is a song by the band The Moody Blues. It's meant to simulate a trip while partaking in illicit substances. I think that's the best way to put it. But it's got had stunning visuals, really like bright colors, and it was just so good. And it was one of those rides where, I was 18 years old when I rode it or whatever, and I didn't really understand the whole Moody Blues thing or how good of a dark ride it really was. But it was so good. And it was a shame when Hard Rock lost that license, and the replacement, and this is another video we'll link in our show notes, is the Monstars of Rock. And this is no relation to Space Jam, but they took that Knights in White Satin ride, they gutted it completely and replaced it with generic monsters going to a concert. And it was like cardboard cutouts. I think it could be the biggest downgrade in theme park history, but Knights in White Satin at Hard Rock Park, and I know we're going to talk Hard Rock Park in a future episode, but it was so good. And you can't talk dark rides without talking Hard Rock Park. And I know neither of you guys, I'm watching you right now on the Google Meet, you're looking at me like, this dude's crazy. Watch a POV, find a POV. Sally has one on their site. Check it out. It's tough to replicate in video form, but riding it was so good. So I have to recommend that to anybody listening and to you guys as well. Now that I'm done waxing poetic about a dark ride that operated for 1 year, let's go over to some more complex, more modern dark rides. Obviously, we've gotten through the simple basic track rides or the simple boat rides. Shane, I know you're a big fan of Spider-Man and Transformers at Universal Islands of Adventure, Universal Studios Florida, Universal Studios Hollywood. What do you like most about the Spider-Man attractions?
So much. So the Spider-Man attraction, we'll get to Transformers in a second, but the Spider-Man attraction, the thing I like most about it is the blending of screens and physical sets is perfect. It is flawlessly done. All of the scenes that are digital should be digital, and then the rest is physical. oftentimes combining the two. I think especially for when this ride opened, 1999, when Islands of Adventure opened, I think it was, a perfect ride for that park then, and I think it's perfect now. The ride system is fantastic. It's probably the best system for a dark ride, just because of the way that the system can move and tilt and rotate and spin around. Just the way that everything is executed inside that ride, I think is really, really held up well. And it's definitely a standout attraction at that park and a standout dark ride as a whole. And as far as Transformers, I feel the same way about the ride vehicle. Transformers is mostly screens, which I actually don't mind, just because the ride system is so good. And I think that if you envision a ride that has enormous screens, explosions, fog, and mist, I mean, what better franchise than Transformers to put in that? It's over the top, it's huge, it's in your face. So I think that for what that franchise is, it fits that ride perfectly. And I think that was a great choice to do that. I still wish that they did the Optimus Prime animatronic rather than the video, but I digress. Other than that, that ride is amazing as well.
Yeah, I'm somebody I've never watched a Transformers movie, believe it or not. And I think we've established on this podcast that I'm like the world's worst movie watcher. But going through Transformers, and you felt like you were a part of the movie, with everything all around you and the screens. But like you said with Spider-Man, there is nothing that beats the mixture of screens and practical sets, and especially since they've upgraded it to digital technology and you've got the advanced 3D glasses. It's still probably one of the top 5 attractions in all of Orlando, if not Florida, the Southeast, or any other region. I mean, there's a reason it does very well in the golden tickets for best dark ride every year.
Yeah, I agree. The queue for both of the rides, 2 of my favorite queues ever. They're perfect. They fit with the ride just perfect. There's pretty much nothing I would change about either queue.
And, I mentioned the golden tickets, but another attraction that does really well in the Best Dark Ride Awards, Shane, I know this is another one of your personal favorites. I think you just love Universal so much. But Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. Obviously, it's tucked away inside Hogwarts Castle at both Universal Studios Florida, Universal Studios Hollywood. I think they've got it at Universal Japan now as well. But Shane, let's go into it. I mean, they've got the Kuka robot arms. They've got a mix of practical sets and screens, and it works so well. What's your favorite thing about Forbidden Journey?
There's so much. So Forbidden Journey is my favorite attraction of all time. My favorite thing, I mean, we already said mix of practical and digital, so I won't bother with that. But I think the ride system, when you think of a Harry Potter ride, it's weird. Normally you'd think of, I don't know, riding a broom or something, but you're sitting on a bench, and somehow the ride makes it fit in perfectly with the world. Which, I mean, that ride system is crazy too, because they literally just took a arm that goes on assembly lines for cars, and they were like, what if we just put 4 seats on it? And that's the Kuka arm system. I think that it is put to use exactly as it should in this ride. It can do a little more extreme things since it's on that arm. You're on your back at some points, and it's tilting you around, not quite upside down, but certainly almost a 90-degree angle. The flow as you're moving between not only how the physical sets interact with the screens behind them, but the transition from physical scenes to screens and vice versa. I still don't know how it's done. Some of the effects on this ride, just they fit together so perfectly. And the way that the entire ride, kind of the scenes blend into each other and flow into each other, because there's not really a concrete story like some of these other rides. It's kind of just like you're going through scenes that are happening around the castle. But I think that that's exactly what this ride should be. And I think the technology allows the ride to do exactly that.
John, any thoughts?
I did not have the greatest experience on that ride. I am pretty strong when it comes to motion sickness, but that one just got me. And I started the day with it. And so it took me a while to recover, but I fully agree with everything you said. I think the ride itself, taking the motion sickness away, was incredibly well done. And this is coming from someone who's not very familiar with the Harry Potter world franchise, but it was just a very well done attraction. And I don't know, maybe I need to ride it differently or take some motion sickness medicine next time I ride. But yeah, they did a great job with it.
And John, let's talk. I know you want to talk about one of your favorites, which is kind of it's a different ride on both coasts at Disney World and Disneyland. But you wanted to talk about Dinosaur and Indiana Jones. What is it about these rides that you enjoy so much?
Yeah, so of course, Indiana Jones at Disneyland opened in '95, and using a similar ride system to its sister attraction, Dinosaur, which opened with Animal Kingdom in '98. It actually at Animal Kingdom, it originally opened as Countdown to Extinction, but then was renamed Dinosaur to coincide with the Disney movie of the same name that was released in 2000. But anyway, the ride systems, theming and story removed, Dinosaur and Indiana Jones both operate on a similar ride system. You're in these kind of off-road vehicles and that are capable of very somewhat violent movements, you may say, but the ride experiences are totally different in the stories, of course. And I think Dinosaur gets some unfair, I think, criticism. It's, of course, if you've ridden Indiana Jones, you probably agree that Indiana Jones is far superior. But again, with me starting at Animal Kingdom, that being my first visit when I was 14, I did not really know much. I didn't know any better. And so I went on to Dinosaur not really having any idea of what to expect, or even having an idea that Indiana Jones used that same system. I knew that Disneyland had an Indiana Jones attraction, but I had no idea it was built, with a similar system. So anyway, I know that Dinosaur, a lot of the action takes place in pitch dark. And Indiana Jones is, I think, a little bit more immersive, but Indiana Jones blew me away. I did Disneyland and California Adventure in one day in 2019. Would not recommend that, but I wrote an article on the website. If you want to try that when the parks reopen, again, would not recommend it, but had to do as much as I could in one day. But anyway, Indiana Jones was only one of two rides that I rode two times. It was Space Mountain, because that was my 200th roller coaster, so it was very a big day for me. But Indiana Jones was just so good. I was like, there's no way I can leave without riding it one more time. And thankfully, the single rider line wasn't too long, so got another ride on that. And it's the action, the pacing, the theming. I mean, it might not be as timeless as Pirates, but I mean, that is just such a great attraction. And I hope it's, you've got supposedly a new Indiana Jones movie coming out possibly in a few years. And I just hope that they keep it as is, because I think, again, you've got the practical effects that are so high quality, and I don't know, they can't be beat. So I like both of them. I think they're both fun. I did not ride Dinosaur on my most recent visit to Animal Kingdom, and again, I think that's because I had been on Indiana Jones just in the year prior, so it kind of lost that. It didn't seem as grand as it did when I was 14, but I think both of them are fine attractions.
Got it. And we're gonna stay at Disney World, but we're gonna move parks, and I'm gonna talk very, very briefly, because we maintain a very strict no spoiler policy. I know John and Shane, both for different reasons, have not gotten to experience Star Wars Rise of the Resistance at Hollywood Studios or Disneyland. Having experienced it, I will say it's quite possibly the greatest dark ride ever. I know that's high praise, but very rarely do I come off a ride with my jaw kind of open and be like, what the heck just happened? And again, not a huge fan of the Star Wars franchise. Love Rise of the Resistance. Very excited to go back to Disney World sometime in the future and ride it again and try to figure out what's happening while it's happening.
Must be nice.
Again, I told you guys I'd remain spoiler free on it, but there are good POVs online. There are good articles on the website. Go check those out if you want to know what we're talking about with Rise of the Resistance. But I love Rise of the Resistance. It is fantastic. But John, we're going to go to a ride that you've ridden and I actually haven't yet, which is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, also at Disney's Hollywood Studios. And I know you got to ride this on your most recent trip. What did you think?
Yeah, so this was really the surprise trip of my last visit to Hollywood Studios. Of course, not getting on Rise of the Resistance, that probably would have been the highlight. But Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, I remember it being announced, but I was just so closely following Galaxy's Edge and the excitement around that I kind of let Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway just kind of fall to the side. And so because, I had a little bit more time to spend in the park that day because I wasn't on, waiting for Rise of the Resistance, we decided to wait for it. And I was excited. I mean, I heard good things about it. It was my first kind of trackless, this next generation trackless ride that Disney is using more and more. And so I remember we got in, we sat down the front row. And again, I'm not going to try not to spoil anything, but if you look at the train, the vehicle, I guess, you sit down and we were seated right behind essentially what is the train engine, the locomotive. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't the best view, but I guess, we'll just can't really see in front of us, but we'll look to the side. And little did I know that things were about to change. So, I mean, and maybe it's because I really didn't have any expectations going on, but the effects and a lot of it is video. There are obviously a lot of videos with the animation, but having ridden its predecessor, the Great Movie Ride, it was fun. It was fine. I mean, it was usually a ride that we would, go on if we had some time to kill. But this such a amazing attraction. I mean, I'm someone I kind of like tracks. I guess I'm a traditionalist in that sense, where I kind of like to stay on the rails. I think that's why I like trains and roller coasters. But if this is if this is the standard for Disney's trackless dark rides, and I know Rise of the Resistance uses one as well, then I am totally on board. So this will definitely be one of the first rides that I get on next time I'm at Hollywood Studios, hopefully after Rise of the Resistance.
You just got to get that boarding group.
I know. It's
7 a.m. and maybe see what happens. But at least now at least Disney's letting you park hop again. So if you're not, I guess you're not stuck there if you don't get it, which is
And you can request a boarding group from outside the park now.
Yes,
well, so
yes, that would have been nice.
That's big.
I'm an early riser, so I would have been all over that.
All good. Lastly, we're going to move on to interactive dark rides, and obviously these range in technology levels from the very basic Sally dark ride shooters. I know the very first one was Great Pistolero Roundup at Family Kingdom in Myrtle Beach. I say that because it's a point of pride for that park, and as it should be. It's very well maintained. Progresses on to rides like Boo Blasters on Boo Hill at the Cedar Fair parks, and you guys know the type of ride. It's a laser gun. You get a little red dot, and you get a little red LED readout score, and you try to score 500 or 600 points and try to beat the person next to you or behind you. I love a great Sally dark ride and a good interactive shooter, and I know pretty much every park you go to that has one of these, it is a Sally creation, which is good. I know there's a few out there that are different, but a quick shout out to Sally because without them, they are the dark ride company. Without them, a lot of this podcast wouldn't really exist. So quick shout out to them if they're listening. But Shane, one of the Sally dark rides that you had the chance to ride recently was Reese's Cup Fusion at Hershey Park. And why is Cup Fusion one of your favorite interactive dark rides?
I was, again, kind of like John with Runaway Railway. I had zero expectations because I didn't really know that much about it. I didn't watch any POVs or anything. I'd actually seen it the year before when I went to Hershey Park. I think it had just opened. and the line was always like 3+ hours. So I never bothered to try and get on it. But this year, the lines were a little bit shorter. So I gave it a try, and I was super glad I did. I know Kyle especially was also loving it. It's a great shooter ride because you can tell what you're shooting at and which laser is yours, which is not the case with a lot of these shooting dark rides. So that was something I really liked, that it was clear. And like I said, you can see what's going on. You're parked usually in front of a big screen, and there's both kind of like cardboard cutout targets in front that move, and then stuff going on the screen behind that's moving as well. And it does that really well. It plays to its strengths. There's some fun moments of like smoke and some scents as well, some fun smells that happen during the ride if you do certain things. And unlike a lot of other dark rides, it's super, super re-rideable. You're not shooting at the same targets every time because there's so much going on those screens. There's bonus points you can get or other things that you notice when you go through it again. It's a really great model for what a modern shooting dark ride should be. So I was super, super impressed with Reese's Cup Fusion.
Nice. And John, you're a big fan of another one of Sally's more modern creations, which are the Justice League Battle for Metropolis at various Six Flags parks. Is it kind of the same thing? Is it a mix of practical sets and media base for you that makes it a winner?
Yeah, I was actually at the media event for one of the first of the round of Justice League rides at Six Flags St. Louis, which opened in 2015, and so was so blown away. I mean, for a Six Flags park to open a ride that really did combine the video screens and the practical effects, I mean, it really blew me away. And I'm a big fan of DC. Maybe not their movie choices always, but just as the Justice League in general, I've always been a fan. So I really appreciated how immersive it was, and how well the ride's pacing was, the interactivity. Full disclosure, I'm terrible at shooting dark rides. I don't know what it is, but I am almost always the lowest scoring person in the vehicle. But really, really great job with the ride, the sound, the fire effects. I mean, just all of it was so. I mean, I think it would be a great attraction for almost any park, but especially for Six Flags Park, which historically dark rides aren't necessarily their focus. To unveil a ride of this magnitude was really, I think, a defining moment for these parks, especially St. Louis. It's not the biggest in the Six Flags family, so for them to land one of these first attractions was really special. And again, like you said, Andrew, Sally, they are awesome people. I always enjoy getting to see them or talk to them at these events, and I think they are. I mean, they are responsible for so many of these rides and the innovations, and I think this was another stellar addition to their portfolio.
Yeah, if while we're on the subject of media-based attractions, I've got to give a quick shout-out as well to the folks over at Triotech. And, they're not predominantly known for their tracked dark rides, but they did do Voyage of the Iron Reef at Knott's Berry Farm, which, God willing, when Knott's Berry Farm reopens, will become Knott's Berry Tales Return to the Farm, which is a nice little callback to a earlier Knott's Berry Farm attraction. It's still part of the park's 100th anniversary. 100th anniversary, however they're doing that. But Voyage to the Iron Reef, very fun, very, like you guys said with the media, there's so much going on the screens that you're constantly firing. I only did it one time when I was out at Knott's, and I think I was pretty good, but I don't think I ranked on the scoreboard for the day. And another Triotech creation is the Legoland Ninjago rides. And I say these just because it is not the traditional, you don't have a blaster, but you've got it's like you're throwing ninja stars. And basically throwing these stars or waving your hand over like a sensor, and connects with a star on the screen. It feels like you're a DJ at a nightclub and you're just going. But very fun, very good arm workout. And again, I had no idea what I was doing, and I think I got the hang of it by the end of the ride. But those were two very fun interactive rides. Speaking of arm workouts, I've also got to give a quick shout out to Toy Story Midway Mania. When you're pulling that,
this little ball on a string,
yeah, the little ball on a string, the shooting mechanism, blaster, can't call it a gun, but you know what I mean. When you're pulling that, it's just like, especially at the end of the ride where you're trying to go through and score as many points as possible, it becomes highly competitive when my family goes to Orlando. And, we're, I'm always trying to one up my younger brother. And it's one of those things like I'll watch a YouTube video about Toy Story Midway Mania, and I will be able to know where things are that he doesn't know, and he'll accuse me of cheating. And then it's just like, it's like tale as old as time for a Stillwell family vacation. Same thing with the Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger spin, which later became Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters at Disneyland, because rumor has it when they were building the ride in Magic Kingdom, it was like Delta Dream Flight if you had wings before that, and it's the same Omnimover system. Disney was convinced more people would be into the you can spin your own vehicle as opposed to shoot the targets. And later it became Astro Blasters because Disney figured out people really like shooting the targets.
I love the spinning feature of Magic Kingdom. I think that's really cool. I haven't been
It's
on
great.
the one at Disneyland, but I think the spinning is really unique.
It is. It's definitely, it's unique. And if you know what you're doing,
Yeah, that's true.
if you can sabotage the person next to you while scoring more points, it's always a good thing. I will say on that one, I've become a Galactic Hero one time, and this is back when they were doing the buttons for Galactic Hero as opposed to the stickers they do now. I've got very lucky, and I'm not going to say I got Galactic Hero because the ride stopped right in front of a 100,000 point target, but I'm not going to say that. And then the last dark ride I really want to talk about, and it's one that turned 20 years old last year in 2020, is for me, it's the baseline for all interactive dark rides, and that's Men in Black Alien Attack at Universal Orlando. I love the practical sets. The size of this building is enormous because there's 2 tracks winding through this, New York City alien infested landscape. And I'm a huge fan of the Men in Black franchise. I'm not a Star Wars guy. I'm not a Jurassic Park guy, but give me a Men in Black movie and we're golden. That was one, we would go to Universal a lot as a family when we lived in Florida, and we would stay, on property. So we would have the Express, and we would re-ride Men in Black so many times during a vacation that I got really good at it when I really enjoyed. Obviously you ride, if you can pick a track, if you're walking down the stairs, I love the track on the right-hand side, which is, I think, predominantly the express track, because I got so good at finding things. But I love the little Easter eggs hidden in there. I know there was a lot of good content that came out from Dave Cobb, who was the principal designer this year for the ride's 20th anniversary. But I love Men in Black Alien Attack so much. I can't say enough good things about it. And that is one I've never maxed out the score on, pushing the red button or not pushing the red button. So I got to get back down to Orlando and ride Men in Black. And, that's one of the rides. There was a blog on Universal's website this week. They've got a queue which mimics the kind of the MIB headquarters in the films. And if you get the right team member, I think Universal calls them team members. If you get the right team member on the right day, they will take you down in there. You can get up close with the aliens.
I was just going to bring that up. Yep.
They've got a guest log for you to sign down there. I got to do that one time when it was, a buddy of mine told me about it. So it's one of those word of mouth kind of deals. But it's so cool, getting right up with those animatronics, which may or may not have been designed to be viewed close up, was a really, really cool experience. And if you're ever down at Universal, I highly, highly recommend trying to get an immigration room tour. If you talk to the team member in front of the attraction or as you exit, most of them know what you're talking about. It really depends on staffing availability and if they've got enough people to take you, but you got to do that. you got to go ride Alien Attack. And it's just, like I said, there have been days where I would rope drop Men in Black Alien Attack and just ride it 2 or 3 times before anybody else got on it. It was great.
I've never ridden it, so you've sold me. I'm going to have to go.
It's great. It's so good.
All right, John. John and Shane, we're taking a Coaster101 road trip to Universal. We're going to go celebrate Men in Black Alien Attack's 21st birthday. We're going to celebrate Shane's 21st birthday, and we're just going to have a good time. And that's what we're going to
ride
do.
Velocicoaster.
And we're going to ride Velocicoaster.
Yes.
No, we're not talking about coasters this episode, guys. It's dark rides only. But before we get into any more coaster or dark ride talk, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Coaster101 podcast. We really appreciate you listening. If you haven't yet, hopefully you have. But if you haven't realized we're an actual website, check us out at Coaster101.com. There's a lot of great articles and interviews and other things we've written about the site. There's probably some really good dark ride content on there. We're on social media wherever you consume the platform. We have not been banned from social media or any of the platforms like other people in the world have been. But we're at Coaster101 wherever you can get your social media. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you're listening. Reviews help people find us. And I looked at our iTunes reviews tonight, and the last review we had was back in October, and it was the Carly Wiesel episode, and it was Carly Wiesel's mom who actually commented on our, or actually reviewed our podcast. She did give us 5 stars. That may be because her daughter was on the episode, but we're gonna pretend like Carly's Wiesel's mom really likes us. So if you've got any questions, comments, hate mail, fan mail, want to send us memes, email us at podcast@coaster101.com. We love getting email. I mean, if you want to talk about your favorite dark rides, somebody will answer that email. It'll probably be me. And we'll talk dark rides via email like it's 1997. Thanks, as always, to JM Music Design for our theme music. That'll do it for this week's show, and we will talk to y'all again soon. See ya.